In these perilous times, see from current events how biblical prophecy is coming to pass in front of our eyes. You're watching In the Last Days, the program that looks at Israel and the end times with teaching from a Hebraic perspective. With Martin and Natalie Blackham, thank you to our friends and partners who make this program possible. Now, here's Martin and Natalie.
Hi, welcome to the In the Last Days television program with myself, Martin Blackham. Great to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining today. Natalie says hello to you. And wherever you're watching, we are the program that looks at Israel, the news, what's happening here. And we particularly want to inform you about important events in the land. Now, one of the things that happened recently was the sad passing of former Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, and we have a very special guest in the studio, Bobby Brown. Thank you so much for coming across today from Toccoa to be with us and to talk about the life of Ariel Sharon. Now, Bobby, you're originally from New York, and you immigrated to Israel in 1978, I understand. You're currently the director of Operation Project Heart, the Holocaust-era Asset Restitution Task Force, a massive job in itself. And visited the former Soviet Union as liaison to the Jewish community, served on many corporate boards, and served as commissioner of the International Commission on the Holocaust-era Insurance Claims as director of the Israel section of the World Jewish Congress. You've also served for 4 years as advisor to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in his previous term, not the current term. And so it's great to have you across. You have so much experience, and you would just be glued to this program. And don't forget to let your friends know about it. So, Bobby, how did you first meet Ariel Sharon?
Well, I met him in many capacities. I worked in the Aliyah department, and he played a role in that many times. I know him from my work in the Prime Minister's office. He was always in a senior position, and I know him as Prime Minister. And, you know, it was certainly an honor to have known him. And his passing, he has a great deal of controversy no matter where you stand on the political spectrum. But I don't think anyone can deny that he was a great man who played an enormous role in the history of this country.
And he was originally in the Haganah as a soldier, as a young man. He was defending his own area, and then rose up through the ranks of the Israeli army, and really played an important part in the significant conflicts in Israel. Before he entered politics, was he, when he was in politics, was he the kind of soldier and giving commands, or?
Well, I think he had a very long history of acting as an officer. And in Israel, what essentially happens is when a decision has to be made, an officer, the highest officer, will sit on a table. Sometimes he will explain the problem, and then all of the interested parties will go around the room and explain their point of view, what they believe, what they think is correct, how we should act, what we shouldn't do. And once everyone has said what they believe, the commander will say, okay, I've heard you all, this is what we're doing. And I think he did that. I think there was never a time when he wasn't ready to hear somebody who had something to contribute, to listen, to take it into consideration. But throughout his career, the decision was his. And he acted upon it, and he took responsibility, sometimes when it was very, very good, and sometimes when it was less than good.
Now, in Israel, as in the world, he has there's been some controversy, and to simplify things for our viewers, one of the important things that you will be interested in is the Jewish communities. And he was someone who was very, as you were saying at the beginning, in favor of the what's known as the settlement movement or the Jewish communities in Israel. Tell us a bit, because maybe a lot of the viewers don't know about this, about the importance of Ariel Sharon for the Jewish communities.
I can tell you that he was probably the senior advocate for those communities, that he believed in communities both in Gaza, which we call Katif, as well as in Judea and Samaria, that he helped, no matter what the position was, he used it to help those communities, whether he was in infrastructure, building roads, whether it was in agriculture, getting land for agriculture and helping agriculture. And he cared, and I would say in every community, he knew the leadership.
Well, on a personal level?
On a personal basis. And, you know, we began living in a very little corner of the land of Israel, in an area called Eastern Gush Etzion. And today it's blossoming. Today it's 4 or 5 communities, including a community where the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs live, including a community where the Minister of Foreign Affairs live, many other illustrious people. And he would, every few months he would be with us. We were part of Gush Etzion, but we had no way of getting to Gush Etzion. So often what we would have to do was to go all the way back to Jerusalem and then all the way out to the other side of Gush Etzion. And the road connecting us, the east and west Gush Etzion, and really making it one large connected community, was done by Ariel Sharon. He realized the importance of it. He did it. I'll tell you a little bit of a funny story. When he was Minister of Agriculture, we had 4 farmers growing one type of flower called anemones. In Hebrew it's kalaniot. And it's a very hard crop because every single day, no matter what the weather, they would have to go out there and take those flowers that are almost ready, cut them, bundle them, ship them to flower stores, and make sure that they didn't get cut too early or too late. We had, of the 4, 3 were extremely good and hardworking. One of them, who was an American, really wanted to, but he kind of gave up in the middle. So when you look down from the hill at these 4 plots, 3 of them were green because every day they cut the colorful anemones off the bushes. And one of them, which had almost been abandoned, was just a festival of colors because the flowers weren't cut. And Ariel Sharon stood on the hill, looked down, saw the 4 plots, pointed to one that was colorful, and said, "That's a farmer." I remember once we have an Arab village not far away, and the Arab village had 2 ways of getting to the village. They had a direct road and an indirect road. And the indirect road, which was a path, it wasn't any kind of formal road, was driven on periodically, and cars from the Arab village would go 15, 20 meters from our houses and pass. And we had great qualms that, God forbid, if a terrorist wanted, he could open fire on a series of houses and continue going to the Arab village, and that would be very problematic. So every visitor we had, we would say, we need to do something about this road. Okay, we don't in any way want to harm our Arab neighbors' ability to get to every house, but this is a clear danger that 99% of the Arabs will never do, but 1% will do. And before there's a disaster, and everyone we said, they said, look, it's hard, it's a road, you can't close a road, it's hard, you have to go to court, it's a very long process, you can't do it. And then one day, Ariel Sharon's right-hand man came out, and for the 1060th time, I went over this problem, and we looked, and he was with the military governor of Bethlehem. At that time, he was a soldier. And he said, tomorrow, I want a fence closing it off on one side, a fence closing it off on the other, and to put on the fence in Arabic and in Hebrew, it's a closed military area, and this road can't be used. Well, it sounded very good, but we'll see. Next day, lo and behold, soldiers came with fencing material, with the signs, closed it off, and it's 30 years ago, and it stopped being a road, and today there are municipal buildings on it. It's stopped being a road. And the danger passed, because no longer could unidentified cars go so close to homes and, God forbid, open fire on those homes and kill innocent people. And I was impressed. And I saw this aid of Ariel Sharon, and I said, first of all, thank you. Thank you 1,000 times. Thank you for saving a horrible situation before it happened. But let me ask you, everyone I spoke to said it can't be done. And you did it. Can you explain to me how you did that? And he looked at me and he said, Bobby, we have one basic rule in Ariel Sharon's office. We don't write anything down. And in those early days, protecting the lives, you know, when we were there in the beginning, they wouldn't let us put out a telephone directory because that would give information to people who might want to harm us of how many families lived there. That's how much security was. And, you know, it's a long time past, and today we're a very large community, but Ariel Sharon's imprint on it, Ariel Sharon's help on it, was always there, and his door was always open. And he, often against his own party, defended us up until a certain point.
And because this is one of the controversies, was up until Gaza and the Gush Katif, when the Jewish community was taken out. But up until then, he'd been very strong in favor of the communities in Israel, and I think that he'd seen the strategic need for the land, which historically, and as our viewers will appreciate from the Bible, belongs to the Jewish people. And indeed, even in the recent Levi report, the Levi report has said that there's international law confirming that it belongs to the Jewish people. You know, the people say that he was a bit of a character. Sometimes he had to go against the decisions of his superiors, and one of the famous ones is one that I know about is with the Suez Canal and the war there, where he went into Egypt and did things. And even the American military historians look at the things that he did there. So did you have much contact with him at the Prime Minister's office? And tell us a bit, what I think would be very interesting for the viewers is also about the situation with Ariel Sharon and the Aliyah, because this is something our viewers are very interested in. How did he help with that?
First of all, he would always be available to speak to youngsters from abroad, and he would always bring in the issue of Aliyah and how much we need them, and how much this is a country of return. He himself, when he was Prime Minister, came out very heavily for a long-term program on a large scale called Masa, where young people can come here for a short-term program that was done by Mr. Netanyahu called Birthright. But the feeling in the Jewish Agency and other places was there is a need for people who want to come here for 6 months or for a year and really taste Israel and be part of Israel before they make that final decision. And he fought for it, agreed for it, helped fund it, and had his office as a full partner to it. I think his last meeting was with new immigrants from Nefesh B'Nefesh, a Aliyah group from the United States who helps bring people here. At his lowest moment, okay, when Christian phalangist troops went into a Palestinian refugee camp in Beirut, and in the end, many unarmed people were killed. And of course, the Israeli army had nothing to do with it. But being that they were in charge of the area, they were blamed, and being he was the Minister of Defense, he was blamed. And it was clear he would have to step down because what happened shouldn't have happened. And his request at that moment, at the lowest moment in his career, was he would like to be in charge of immigration, of Aliyah, in a Jewish agency. Not to be chairman of the Jewish agency, which is a higher position, to be in charge of immigration and to do the kind of bulldozing that he was best known for, to make it easier and open up the gates. And at that time, he was in disgrace, and the Americans, who had a great deal to say on Jewish agency policy, said no. And he continued in politics, and of course he made his comeback. He became a minister, he became a defense minister, and eventually became prime minister. So, that, I would say, after defense, okay, and foreign policy, his most important thing to his heart was the immigration of Jews back to the land.
And he was, as Prime Minister, he was concerned about that with, and indeed you worked in that department, didn't you, with the helping
I worked
in the Prime Minister's office with the Aliyah?
I worked with other people had too little sympathy for some of the immigrants, most notable being the Ethiopian. We took in, at that point, 20,000 black Africans who did not have any kind of higher education, any kind of skills, training, certainly no resources. And there were very many voices saying, why would you want to take these people in? Why would you want to? They're going to be economic basket cases. They're going to be on welfare. They're going to be, and their customs are so different. Every single group that came to live in Israel had one thing in common. They all prayed in Hebrew. The only group that didn't were the Ethiopians. They prayed in a language called Gez, a holy language in Ethiopia. And he did not have much patience for that kind of an argument. He said, if they're Jewish origin, if they're Jews, then our job is to get them here. And he fought for what was right, as did Netanyahu before him.
Now, you were very involved, Bobby, or you had trips out to Russia for the Jewish community, and many of our viewers, you may be aware of this and you may not. And if you've just tuned in, we have Bobby Brown from the Jewish Agency. We're talking about the legacy of Ariel Sharon. There was a large Jewish community that had been held back in Russia from making Aliyah, and you went out to see them. And was he involved in any of that?
He was a supporter. He was a supporter. Basically, the Jewish community had been devastated, first by the Russian Revolution, then by the Nazis, which overrun large parts of the former Soviet Union, and the policy was kill Jews wherever you find them. Um, and then we were literally on the edge of another mass destruction of Jews when Stalin had put into place, he had already had balloon trials of engineers, of doctors, and he was going to have a massive expulsion and possibly destruction of the Jewish community that was left. And with the Jewish community cut off from all other Jews. They didn't receive aid, they didn't receive teachers, they didn't receive, and indeed, those few brave individuals like our chairman of the Knesset today, Yuli Edelstein, who became teachers of Hebrew, were put in jail for it. They were put in jail because how dare they teach Hebrew? And there were two basic trends. Those who said, don't do anything, you will make it worse, number one. And number two, they've been 50 years of communism. These people are no longer Jews. They've intermarried. They don't believe in Judaism. They have no, there are a few here and there, but it's negligible. And there were those who said, no, even if there's one Jew, we have to fight for their right to leave, to come home. And I had been involved in that from, I think, 1964. I was privileged to twice be sent, once by the government, in fact both times by the government, to connect with leaders of the Aliyah movement in the former Soviet Union. And the second time, first time, had a very interesting thing. I had come right after a major trial, something called the Leningrad hijacking trial, where Jews wanted to take an airplane and bring it to Israel just to be able to get out. They had no other way. And they were arrested, put on trial, and indeed two of them were sentenced to death, who later commuted, but they were sentenced even to death in long prison terms. And I was one of the first people sent there. And the Soviet Union had put out bulletins of what happened at the trial. And they said the defendants came forward and said, we are so sorry that we were disloyal to the motherland. We were tricked by those Zionists, and we never should have said a word or done any act against them. We plead for mercy. That was the official text. One of the people I saw was a woman who had taped a tape recorder on her chest. They didn't have cordless mics at that time. Ran a mic down her sleeve and had the entire trial on tape, where indeed the defendant said, we are Jews, we will go to Israel. Even if we have to walk there, we will go, and not you or any power on earth will ever stop us. And she gave me the tapes. The only true story of what happened. I was scared stiff. I wasn't scared of getting caught. I was scared what happens if these tapes are taken away. Then the false reports will always be the one. So I went to the American Embassy, and I told them what I have. And they said, leave it here, and let us hear it, and then we'll decide. I didn't feel really good about leaving it, but I wanted it out. I didn't want to be caught at customs and have it destroyed. So I left, and I came back the next day, and they said, we heard it. It's indeed interesting. We'll be glad to take it. I said, oh, thank you. Will you make it available to me in the United States? And they said, no, we're not a mail service. I said, will you make it available to journalists? And they said, we can't promise. I said, will you make it available to the Israeli government? And they said, we're not a mail service. We'll take it, and we'll decide what to do with it. So I said, give it back. And I was given an embassy, which will remain nameless, that if something happened very bad, I could go there. There was no Israeli embassy at that time. So I took a cab, and I thought I was James Bond, because I said, if it, the number was 172, I said 152. And the cab driver said, oh, you mean 172? You mean this and this embassy? So I went there, and I went in. I asked for the person that I was told about. And he says, no, I told him I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not going to be in connection with this. Very hostile. And I said, please, this is the last time. I have no idea what happened before, and finally he took it. And 2.5 weeks later, it was in Israel. It made all the newspapers, the transcript, the true story came out, and the Russians never again claimed that their scenario that didn't happen was a true story. And these people, heroics under incredible danger, was recognized. And then the second time I went there, I was also in touch with Jews who were activists. And eventually I had the privilege of being expelled from the Soviet Union for conduct unbecoming a tourist.
We're out of time, Bobby. So interesting, and thank you so much for coming across today to join us on In the Last Days television program, looking particularly at the legacy of Ariel Sharon, who really for me epitomizes the state of Israel. He grew up just before it was born, was involved with the Haganah, was a soldier, and helped fight for the rights of the nation. And I found particularly interesting his work with Aliyah, because this is one of the things our viewers and you at home are very concerned about, is the Jewish people coming back to the land of Israel. So thank you so much for coming across today.
Thank you for having me.
If you would like to email us, you can always email us at info@inthelastdays.com. Don't forget to visit the website, www.inthelastdays.com. And remember, we're living in the last days.
You've been watching In the Last Days, a TV program with Martin and Natalie Blackham, the program that looks at Israel and the end times with teaching from a Hebraic perspective. If you would like to financially support the program or find out about conferences, meetings or ministry products, then please contact us with the details on your screen. Visit our easy-to-use website at www.inthelastdays.com and register for our free e-newsletter. Get the latest news from Israel, product information, online video teaching, or watch today's TV program at a time that's convenient to you. Thank you again, friends and partners, for making this program possible.
See you same time, same station for the next program from In the Last Days.